let's go back to your work life, right?
Yep.
20% of the actions that you take in your work produce 80% of the results. So 20% of your sales actions produce 80% of your results. 20% of your lead generation actions produce 80% of your results. So a virtual assistant should help you do more of that.
The Titan Tale time again. Yes, it's Chris G here, and we're talking about Titans and have a great Titan available today to share his stories with us. Please help me welcome Barry Coziahr.
Thank you.
Barry, can you, Barry, I know Barry owns the marketing companies and some virtual assistant companies and so forth, but can you go ahead and just give us a little bit about you?
Sure.
In your history?
Yeah. I was born a poor boy. No, I'm just kidding. That's I was channeling the Jerk, Steve Martin in The Jerk, that film. If
Right.
you uh,
Maybe some listeners are too young for that, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, politically incorrect humor. Anyway, watch the movie yourself to get the rest of that joke. So, but yeah, I was born in the Midwest. I grew up in the Midwest. My father grew up on a farm. He was an entrepreneur. He went straight to the top of the companies that he worked for, and then he broke out on his own. Failed a few times, bankrupt a few times, bankrupt once before he figured it all out, pulled it all together. And I think we at least broke one other time, if not twice. That we didn't talk too much about that. But he was a great guy. He loved people. He had well over 100 employees in the final iterations of his business. And and I learned a lot from him. Open the doors for ladies, talk to everybody, make lots of friends, help people. He also introduced me to Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
Yep. Who's I like the concept of you can get everything in life that you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. And I like making friends too. And I like working with cool people. So all things I must have got. Maybe I don't know. I don't believe in genetics in this thing. I don't think it's a genetically passed down. I think that's hogwash, as we'd say in the West. I think spiritual beings attract other spiritual beings. And this is a church thing for me, if we can talk about religion. But basically it's a church thing for me, where I'm attracted to. I think I was attracted to my dad because of the kind of person he was, and my mom's an artist, and the reason that I'm there with him, and spiritually he imparted or impressed upon me his values, and so I would say that I remind people of him, and that's great. That's about the deepest compliment I could have. And then the other thing he'd want me to do is beat him at everything, and because I'm his legacy, right?
Right.
So one of the things I beat him at is I grew an inch taller than him.
So with that impression on you, did you start right out of the gate being an entrepreneur? Did you go to the corporate life or anything like that?
Okay, well, let's see. What did I do? I right out of I went and learned about sales and worked at I was a shoe salesman at Kenny's Shoes, and I won the records. Right, I beat the records and sold the most shoes back in the 80s. I sold like almost $10,000 worth of shoes in 1 week during Christmas week. That's a lot of shoes back in the 80s.
That's a lot of shoes.
It's like $30-$40 a pair. That's $10,000 over a course of a week. I mean, I was running all week. He came and actually watched me do it. He stood outside and watched me doing my work. He was super impressed.
Dad?
Yeah, my dad.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Didn't even let me know he was there. Told me about it later. And and then I had my first failure back then too. I failed in management because I didn't know how to study, and I'd almost barely graduated high school, and I didn't know how to study. And what I did is I went and dug in, and I found an organization that's in St. Louis actually that you can check out. It's called Applied Scholastics. AppliedScholastics.com. It's part of a larger organization called the Association of Better Living and Education, or ABLE for short. And I used the tools introduced to me by ABLE to to fully handle, and applied scholastics specifically, to fully handle and address the subject of education. In fact, I worked for the next 5 years as I did different types of jobs and professions and stuff. I worked for the next 5 years to fully address my education. During that 5 years, I worked for my dad. I tried to start my own business when I was 20, which is a PR and marketing firm. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a business card, Cozy Promotions, I think is what it was, for Coziahr. And so that was just after that, right? Or just when I started handling my education, and partnered with a friend, and we were going to do this thing. And then I ended up working right after I got to the end where I felt like I could read books again, and I developed my study abilities to the point where I became a lover of reading.
Mhm.
I basically got to work at a publishing company. A publishing company fell across my lap where I could even learn more about books. And so for the next 2.5 years, I worked for a publisher, and I fell in love with books, and I fell in love with the book industry. And from there, I get introduced to some nonprofits. The publishing company, by the way, is called Bridge Publications. Bridge Publications is in Los Angeles, and they sell fiction books at that time and nonfiction books. And the other sister company they have is a place called Galaxy Press, which is pretty cool. So I worked for them, and you can check out what kind of books they have and stuff. But I worked for them. They were an interesting company. I learned a lot about self-improvement. I became an avid self-improvement guy. I'll just grab a couple off my shelf here. All right. Just thought, like, I read, here's a good one. David Meerman Scott, The New Rules of Marketing PR, right? How to grow your small business by Donald Miller, done by Brad Collin, right? Peng Yoon's book on content marketing, right? Oops, you guys aren't seeing this.
We're good.
And then 24 Ways to Find Paid Speaking Gigs by Nora Prather. So this is just a few books off my shelf. Story Brand's another great one. Some of my favorites include Perry Marshall's book, The 80-20 Sales and Marketing, Richard Koch's book, The 80-20 Principle. So I dug in and basically got the equivalent of a master's in marketing and PR, I think, right? And then I found my way from the publishing company to a nonprofit that I worked for, and I ended up working with these groups, Applied Scholastics. I worked with those groups, Applied Scholastics, all in a secular sense, right? These are all secular groups that teach people, non-religious groups that teach people how to improve themselves with various tools like the Applied Scholastics education. And there's another one, which is I'm a spokesperson for, called The Way to Happiness, which is a character education program out of Los Angeles. And I use this to reduce crime in St. Louis by teaching people moral standards. This is a film that they produced based on their little booklet, which doesn't have a single author's name on it. It's just pushed to basically teach people a common sense guide to better living, morals, ethics, standards that are pushed out there into society to make society a better place culturally. And I think we could use some more ethics in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe in politics. Politics is the first one that jumps into mind that could use ethics. Both sides, right?
Absolutely. We're just talking about politics in general. That's right.
I'm so partisan. It makes me sick. So yeah, politics in general, right? And they just need it, right? They need to not have lobbyists deciding, corporate money deciding what's going on. I worked for the next 15 years in nonprofit arena, and then 15 years into it, my wife of 17 years and I went our separate ways. I have 2 kids from that marriage.
Mhm.
And I decided I needed to make some money. Nonprofit wasn't quite cutting it for me. I need to open a business too. So I kept working my full-time job in nonprofit, and I took on another full-time job, which is open my own marketing company with everything I'd learned so far from all that experience those 20 plus years of experience, I started my own marketing company. And so I've had my own marketing company for 20 years, and I started with a marketing company, and then we eventually evolved into having a virtual assistant agency because I worked with a lot of remote personnel. So I now have friends in South Africa, South America, Central America, the Philippines, Taiwan, India. I have friends all over the world. And so I have a huge marketing company with full-time employees. We're doing great. So I end up having a virtual assistant company, marketing company. Oh. And then my wife, a few years ago, said, I've wanted to be a writer since I was 8. And so I said, great, let's do it. And she read 300 Regency romance books. Regency is the period in England during the early 1800s, for those that don't know. Regency historical romance, and they're a little steamy, right? For there's sex scenes in there, just so people know. NinaJared.com, just so you're forewarned. But they're always committed relationships, none of the weird stuff that people get into. They're just good books with good stories and good characters. And then she's producing also a sweet version, which is clean, for that target audience as well, because there's a large portion would like to have clean versions. So she's producing the clean versions as well for those folks. And then we're going to produce a totally clean version to teach young adult readers about good relationships, and have a different title and everything. So I have a publishing company too.
What kind of challenges did you face when you started your marketing company 20 years ago?
I'd say the biggest challenge that we face, which we've corrected over the years, is controlling finance. One of the things in the way to happiness, right, is fulfill your obligations.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And a person can end up with a long list of obligations in life, and they have to fulfill them. There's a good TV show called My Name is Earl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every episode he'd go out and he'd fix something on his list. And and Earl's my hero sometimes, and when I got somebody on my list that needs to get sorted, I got a couple guys that they're inconsolable. I don't know that I did something so horrible for them to be so inconsolable. They just can, meaning they can't, there's no way to fix things with them because they are stubborn and angry. And so, other people would say, walk away, who cares, not your problem, you did so much to try to fix it. And I kind of go, well, sometimes I go, challenge accepted instead. And so just they're on my list, not a primary project, but a side project. Someday this guy's going to love me again.
Well, you got a lot of things going on. Quite a few. What gets you up in the mornings? What drives you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I really like building the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my virtual assistant agency is called Team Builders, teambuilders.agency. And I have a bunch of great people that work for me. We test them, we vet them, we make sure we have the best of the best. And I've got the best, the even best of the best of those, the best of the best of the best, running the place, right? And they're in charge. And so like Emmy, shout out to Emmy. She runs the team, and she's incredible. So, and then other guys, we're helping them to become even more incredible. So one of the things that gets me up in the morning is building the team. And then as far as like if I could build 1,000 teams, that'd be amazing. And then the other thing that gets me up in the morning is figuring out where I can spend 90% of my time back in the nonprofit arena while I've got these other businesses going that are supplying me with all the money I need, and also help me to pay for the 90% of the time that I spend introducing people to things like character education, right? Applied Scholastics, or I'm sorry, Association for Better Living and Education. They help people with things like character education, from the way to happiness. Applied Scholastics helps people solve educational problems. Like we have a client right now called the Citizens Academy that is helping people to learn the preamble to the Constitution by clearing up all the words to the preamble. I can recite the preamble. You can test me later if you want to. But basically, we also have a group called Criminon that works in criminal reform to flip the recidivism statistics. Recidivism is people
We're gonna
going.
say, what's that?
Yeah, recidivism is people going back to jail after they get out of jail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, 75% of the people that get out of jail go back to jail. 75%.
And do we know why?
Because they learned the wrong things while they're in prison. Because they go to, as we call it, the criminal college. You want to become a better criminal,
You go to jail and learn from the best?
you go to prison and you learn
Mm-hmm.
the best. The best.
Well, I know jail and prison. I'm just
Yeah.
a small country boy, but yes,
Yeah.
prison.
Yeah, you go to prison, you learn from the best, and then you find out how to really score big, whatever. And you find out basically also how to go to jail for the big time and how to get the good lawyers and how to get out of it. You learn all the shit that you learn, right? Instead, the Criminon program, excuse my language, by the way, I apologize. But I just only use bad language when I'm emotional about something.
Inspired by something, yes. Well, you're passionate. I can tell.
You could
We're
deep it,
good.
right?
We're good. No, we won't bleep nothing. We ain't got time to be bleeping.
So basically, Criminon teaches people stuff like the way to happiness and education, and they also teach them about the kind of individuals that they've run into in life that have sent them down the wrong path. And Criminon helps a person to restore their self-respect because they became a criminal at the moment in life where they lost their self-respect. And so we rehabilitate self-respect. And so we end up with 75% of the people that get out of prison that have done the Criminon program never going back to jail. Right? And yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty, and the other 25% just weren't using what they learned, and maybe they'll learn it the second time around.
Years ago, about 8 now, I bought a program, and I knew that I was so busy that if I didn't do it, if I bought it, I wouldn't finish it myself.
Yeah.
I knew I needed help.
Yeah.
So at that point, I decided I didn't want to hire anybody locally because it would just cost, I didn't have the cost. And I decided I want to go virtual.
Yeah.
So I hired a couple virtual assistants then, and they helped me immensely and they just did what I needed to do. And then things I needed to do, they told me, go do this. Now it's handy. And you mentioned earlier a little time effort. You mentioned something about time. And then before our meeting, you mentioned 80-20. And I'm assuming that's rated on time. Can you elaborate a little bit on
Sure.
your virtual assistant
Yeah.
journey and what's the best time to get one and stuff like that?
Sure. The best time to get one was yesterday. So, and it doesn't matter who you
Through
are.
that, no, I agree there.
So,
I don't care if it's virtual or real. I mean, with
right.
you need somebody to help you.
A virtual assistant who's at a distance, the benefit is that because their economy is different, because the currency is different, because the cost of living is different, I can basically pay me $10 an hour to give you an amazing assistant, and my people are operating in the top 20%. They're in the upper middle class or above as a result of working for me. Plus, they get all the benefit of all the systems that I just told you about, like the educational systems, the character education system, everything, right? So it's pretty awesome. So what they do is what should you do? Well, the 80-20 principle was designed by a guy named, or discovered or developed by a guy named Parodi. It's called the Parodi principle. And he's an Italian horticulturist, if I can say that correctly. And he basically is also an economist. And he found out that 80% of the property in his country, Italy, was owned by 20% of the people. And so he's like, oh, that's interesting. And then he went out to his garden, and he found out that 80% of the produce was produced by 20% of the plants. And so 80-20 is a rough number. Sometimes it's 95-5, Sometimes it's
Or
30,
75, 25. Yeah. So,
35, 65. The
mhm.
point is that there's a key thing that it produces most of the results. And that can go negative too. Like you could say 20% of the politicians in Washington create 80% of the problems in the whole country. We won't say which 20%, right? We'll skip that for the
You're
benefit.
fun. Get a little digger. Go ahead.
I'll just say it that that's the way it is, right?
Yep.
It's just truth, right? Maybe it's 5%. Maybe it's 5% of the politicians. Maybe we got this nasty 5% that are the people that are doing it. Who knows?
Mm,
Maybe it's 2.5% that are the truly evil ones, and But anyway,
right.
so you have in. Let's go back to work now. So we've talked about plants. We talked about property. We talked about politicians. Let's go back to your work life, right?
Yep.
20% of the actions that you take in your work produce 80% of the results. So 20% of your sales actions produce 80% of your results. 20% of your lead generation actions produce 80% of your results. So a virtual assistant should help you do more of that. And then also you get that 80%.
More of your 20%.
Yeah, more of your
Right.
20%. I would focus on that, more of your
Right.
20%. And then of course, there's always going to be those pesky people like the IRS who's going to want you to do bookkeeping. So that's like it falls into the 80% that you only have to do because of government regulations. You only have to produce these amazing books because government regulations. They actually like suck up your time and your energy because of government regulations. So good. So we
Well,
hire somebody to do
I
that.
I can argue that too a little bit. Now, I don't like the IRS,
Uh,
but we can get into that's a whole other subject. But anyway,
uh,
you do need to know where you're at financially.
that's different.
Okay, that's different. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, that's different. I would agree.
Yeah.
I need to know every week where my expenses are. I need to know where my income is. Right now, my virtual assistants are helping me put together a weekly report so I can monitor income, what's coming in, what prospects we have on the horizon, what we're spending. Are we spending more than we're making? Are we spending less than we're making? What's all of these things, right? And so
Mhm.
that's a key measurement action, right? That needs to be done so that we can steer the ship. Yeah. So and then there's other things, but all that bookkeeping stuff and
Yeah.
expense categorization, okay, that might be good for an analysis. That's definitely good for saving money because say we find all the 50 subscriptions that we have to various things that we signed up for so we can unsubscribe and save that money. There are useful things for bookkeeping, but they're that's the right way to use bookkeeping. That's part of that could be considered part of the 20%, you know, and saving money from the IRS, categorizing expenses in such a way that I don't have to pay the IRS more. Well, that's income producing, so that falls in the 20% as far as I'm concerned.
Right. My accountant one time, she goes, I was talking about the IRS, and I want to get rid of it. And she said, you want to put me out of a job? I said, absolutely not. Instead of talking to you about how to save taxes, I'd rather talk to you about how to make money.
Yeah,
And she thought about it for a minute. And I said, wouldn't that be a much and more enjoyable conversation?
yeah,
To me, it would be. It's
yeah.
like,
I
what
agree.
can I do? Yeah. Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
let's do a national sales tax instead. That was an interesting movement back in the early 2000s. Maybe that's the solution. I don't know what the solution is, but if
Uh,
we have a national sales tax, we don't need the IRS anymore, do we?
no, but you could use that. Well, this isn't about all that, but you could use them people. Someone said, well, what would you do with them? I'd make them auditors. That's what they're hired to do anyway, right?
Yeah.
Audit our institutions.
Point them back to the government. If they
That's
actually
right.
do something, they could work for us for a change instead of trying to police
Yeah.
us. And
There's a book called Fair Tax. You read it?
that's where I heard of the national sales tax, I think.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, anyway,
That's a great plan. We saw this. Let's hope that there's a cool tech mongol who gets put in charge of auditing creating an audit system that makes our government more financially efficient.
I wonder who you're talking about.
I don't know.
Anyway, I wonder what kind of car he drives.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
I
he's
don't
I
know.
like his truck too. It's interesting.
So when did you have your first virtual assistant? When you started your marketing agency?
I've had an assistant
Oh, an assistant. Okay, fair enough.
Assistant. I had my first assistant when I was 21 years old.
Now, was that through a business or is that
That was
or
my dad's business.
oh, I see. Okay.
I was promoted. What's that? What do they call that when you get promoted and you don't deserve it because you're a family member?
Yeah,
Well,
well, I've dealt with that before.
oh,
Lucky, I guess. Lucky. We'll just call it lucky. I don't think you said it. What did your dad do?
oh, my dad. He raised on a farm. Then he came to Peoria, Illinois. Peoria,
Uh-huh.
and he worked for a clothing company. He quickly became the men's clothing buyer, and then he became the vice president of an old department store, men's and women's department store called Shrasky's,
Mm.
back in Peoria, Illinois. And then he opened his first business with a friend, where they anyway producing some product, and that failed, bankruptcy, etc. And then he got another job as an outside sales rep for a big company, and he struck gold. And he had all the big accounts, and he had Kmart, Walmart, Home Depot, all of them. And
Yes,
basically,
he did.
yeah, he struck gold. He basically he innovated. He sold what was called a lawn trimmer, sort of like the Ryobi lawn trimmers that people use.
Yeah.
His was from a company called IDC, which originally called Internal Something Dynamics Corporation, and which was eventually bought by the Japanese. So that work went away after a decade or so. But he made a lot of money in the meantime. And so he came up with a really innovative system where, he sold to Kmart. Kmart doesn't like returns. You want to keep your returns low when you sell to somebody like Kmart. And so he came up with a system where you ship the problem item to him. He fixed it and refurbished it and sent it back to the store. And it was all paid for under the warranty system that was from the manufacturer. So he got his warranty money. He made money fixing it up for Kmart. Then he sent it back to Kmart, kept their return percentages low, and got their contract again every year. And then he used all those statistics to close all the
The
rest
other
of the guys.
companies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he had like over 60 employees that were all employed to do refurbishing and repair work on the Ryan trimmer, until the Japanese eventually decided, oh, that's a great idea. I guess we'll just buy this company and take all that in house.
Why
And
not?
yeah, so why not? And anyway, so there you go. And
What has
he had a
been
bunch of businesses he opened to around that time, because he wanted to find other things that would support him and make money. So you take a lot of that money and invest it into other businesses, which could be successful. Anyway, sorry.
well, you mentioned you had children,
I do. They're lower 30s.
lower 30s. Have you impressed upon them the things that you were impressed upon?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're both church going girls, different churches. One goes to my church, the other one took her own path, because that's part of, we believe in that, letting people make their own decisions and respecting the religious beliefs of others, whatever that might be. And they're both never had a drug problem. They've had their ups and downs with relationships as they learned along the way. Hey, me too. Uh, so, and they're both their husband. Funnily enough, husband of one works in merchandising at Walmart in the Midwest, or down there in Arkansas, and so he's a corporate guy. And she's a mother. Got my first grandkid, and then my other daughter works at a construction supplier warehouse as a sales rep. And then she's also got, her husband has a roofing company as well.
So in some ways, I mean, her husband has a roofing company and she's in the business. Do they want to have anything like themselves or be an author like your current wife?
I don't know. We haven't talked about that. They love to read. They love entertainment. They love,
They love the books she's writing or what?
yeah, they'll be reading.
Yeah,
They'll wait till the clean ones come out.
that's probably a good idea.
Because it'd be a little bit odd to read the sexy scenes, for my wife. So, which who could
It
blame?
would seem awkward.
So my wife
Kinda
actually,
like,
my wife actually particularly told them not to read the books until the clean versions came out.
mm,
And so now we've gotten to book number 10, and she's about to put the clean versions out. One of my companies, by the way, is an agency for authors to help authors to publish and expand. And so as a result, we've gotten to the point where now we have assistants. We have an assistant who is also an editor who's going to find all the pieces in my wife's books that she needs to edit to change them from steamy to clean.
gotcha.
And then, so then my wife will be able to actually produce all of those books, clean versions with new titles, brand new titles and everything, new content, new scenes, right? So that even the old readers can go back and read them. Yeah. And brand new books with 20% changes or something like that in the book, 20% more new material. And so we're using our virtual assistant network and everything we've learned to get that done. She'll be able to double her catalog this year, which means that, well, she makes as much as $8,000 a month selling books, right? And so she'll be able to double her catalog. So, so it's a race if she's going to make more money than me.
Well, good luck to her.
Yeah.
Um, we're talking a lot about ethics and so forth, and it seems something that's very dear to you. What about AI?
AI, I love AI and ethics. AI is a soulless piece of matter. So,
That's true.
yep,
Yeah.
soulless piece of matter that is designed by human beings, which have either a good master or a bad master. And so, things like Terminator, well, could an AI do such a things? Well, they're going to be programmed by if they're programmed by an evil person, maybe, you know, are there good people in the world that can also fight the fight and make sure AI doesn't go that direction? Yes, thank goodness. And there's even AI for the Bible, right? There's AI for,
Well, what do you mean by that?
oh,
AI for the Bible.
there's an AI references where AI has been hooked up to the Bible, like ChatGPT has been hooked up to a Bible reference library. So you can go and you can write sermons, and you can,
Oh, I follow you. Okay.
yeah, now you can write sermons, you can ask questions, you can get parables to teach your children, things like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? And so it's a tool, and it allows us. I feel like I finally have a computer that can think that they can keep up with me, and so I'm using it. But the number one rule, as far as I'm concerned with AI, is don't trust it, because you don't trust things that can't reciprocate. You trust something where you place your life in the hands of something that, that's a high level of trust. So, or what about, I trust it about as much as I trust a chair, and chairs wear out and they break. And so, like, do I trust it to take care of my clients? No. Do I trust it to give me correct information? No. Do I trust it to save my life? No. Now, can it help with any of those things? Yes. As long as we have a smart person who, A, understands ethics, right? And ethics is more important than anything the AI can put out. And B, knows its craft well enough, his or her craft well enough, that it knows how to make sure AI is really helping.
How do your virtual assistants, or how do you teach your virtual assistants how to use AI?
It's a good question. So very first thing they have to study is The Way to Happiness.
Okay.
The Way to Happiness is a character education book, like I mentioned. And
Yeah.
so,
Where can people get that? Is what I'm thinking about it.
sure, thewaytohappiness.com. Thewaytohappiness.com is a secular, non-religious character education booklet, and there's even a free course on it on their website. And then, so first off, they'd have to study that. Then they need to be an expert in their area, which means they need to learn how to study. So I introduced them to Applied Scholastics from the ABLE website, Association of Better Living and Education. I introduced them to able.org is where people can go for that. And I introduced them to applied scholastics, and they learn how to study. Because if they know how to study, they can do, well, knowledge is power, right? And power
Sure.
can be used for good or for evil. So we teach them how to study, and then we have them dig in and learn. I mean, I have books on different, you know, aspects of business that I make them study, graphic design, whatever. They learn from experts who are kings in their field, titans, if you will, uh,
Yes.
in their field, and then so they learn from these titans, and they learn that advice, and then they help the business owner implement it. So these are the things that a virtual assistant has to be orientated to in order to get where they want to go.
Let's say I'm a business owner
Hmm.
and ready to expand, or I know I need help. How do you start off with a customer like that? I mean, we contact you, you identify the problems or what their needs are.
Yeah,
How does that work?
yeah, that's right. I first off, they just reach out to me via teambuilders.agency. That's the name of the website. Teambuilders.agency. They can go there, fill out a form. They can also email me at barry@stampedebranding.com. And the first thing to do would be have a short little meeting, quick little meeting. Find out more about them, their business, what they're up to. Find out what their goals, their dreams, their difficulties are. You know, what do they need help with? What are they searching to do? Think about that from the perspective of the 80-20 principle. You know, Richard Koch and Steve Marshall, Perry Marshall, sorry, Perry
Mm,
Marshall, and his book. And yeah, and then I introduced him to Emmy, who I mentioned earlier. And
right.
I messaged her, by the way, while we are on here. I told her I mentioned her on a podcast and how awesome she was. So I introduced
Mhm.
her to Emmy, and she introduces her to her awesome crew, including Nina and the rest. And they basically set them up with a person who can take care of their needs. And away we go.
One final question or discussion here. Before we started the recording, that is, you mentioned a book that you have been recommended about audacious goals.
Oh, yeah. Darn it. My
Oh,
friend,
that's okay. No, we're good. Can you?
yeah.
You haven't read any of it yet, so
It was recommended by my friend Edwin Dearborn. Ed's he's a fractional CFO
uh-huh.
or CMO. I'm sorry, Chief Marketing Officer,
Mhm.
and yeah, and he has this whole thing about. He basically does a seminar on audacious goals and helping people to set up audacious goals. And so I'm just going to give his email address. It's
Sure.
eddearborn@gmail.com. And tell him Barry sent you, and tell him that you wanted to find out about the book and the seminar he does on audacious goals. And reach out to Ed, and he'll hook you up.
Well, Barry, thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
How about we reach out to you if we want to make it happen?
Yeah, Barry@stampedebranding.com. Barry@stampedebranding.com, or call me, text me. Text is great, 314-398-7269. Text me, and I'll text you back.
Awesome. And as always, you can find Barry's information on our guest directory at titanstail.com. There'll also be some links at the bottom of the show notes here for Barry's information, as well as you can always reach out to me about other things at Chris Gilman through Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You guys have a great day. Thank you, Barry, again.
Thanks, Chris. I
You've
appreciate
been
it.
a,
That was
you've
great.
been a great Titan. Appreciate it. Bye bye.